Canadian and American attitudes on climate change will be released tomorrow, but we have the results today in advance of a public policy forum conference on the subject here in Ottawa. It shows that 80% of Canadians believe in global warming versus just 58% of Americans. It also found that 3/4 of Canadians will pay to reduce emissions through a cap on trade system or a carbon tax, while just 55% of Americans surveyed would support such a surcharge. To discuss the great divide in environmental attitudes, we're joined by Paul Ledwell of Public Policy Forum and Alex Wood of Sustainable Prosperity. Thank you both for coming here. Were you surprised by the results? Go ahead. Either one of you take that question.
I think, Don, we were surprised by the strength of the response in Canada. The 80% figure was an extremely strong indication of the views that Canadians have about climate change. And also within that 90% of them felt that it was a serious issue that requires attention. So very, very strong and compelling response from Canadians on this issue.
Yet Stephen Harper doesn't seem to put climate change on much of a pedestal here for policy doing.
Well, I think this challenges a bit of the conventional wisdom, which I think we've certainly bought into to a certain degree, which is that this issue, as Paul's saying, has fallen off or had fallen off the table in terms of an issue that Canadians cared about. What's interesting, what's new about this poll is really challenging that assumption that, in fact, it hasn't gone away as an issue, and that Canadians are expecting their governments, their leaders, to act upon it.
How do you use this, Paul, as a sort of a framework for what you're going to do over the next 24 hours at the conference? What do you hope to come out of that?
Well, there's a couple of things. One, there's a clear message in the response to the polls that this is an issue for all levels of government. So it's not just to be left at the feet of the federal government, that provincial and municipal governments even need to respond to it. So there needs to be a sense of a collective approach to this question. And also there are some very specific issues and questions that were posed about the policy levers that should be chosen and the preparation and the openness that Canadians have to see those pursued. So I think that this can provide to our leaders and our policymakers some ideas as to where Canadians would like to see some action and what kind of action they're prepared to contribute to.
Why is this environmentalism hidden when you do the mainstream polling? You never see environment concerns. Well, I guess you see them in usually top three usually. Yep. But at one point in time it was number one. Yep. With a bullet. What's kept it sort of lower in the radar screen?
Well, over the past 2 years, obviously, economic issues have become the transcendental issues of the day. For that kind of economic security is still pervasive, still dominates most people's thinking. And again, the issue for us, or the interesting issue for us, is that there hasn't been, on the basis of that, any kind of drop-off in belief that this is not an issue anymore. And it puts a bit of a challenge back in terms of us thinking about this environment-economy trade-off. Again, conventional assumptions about whether Canadians see it that way, I think, are being challenged by that.
Put a bit of a spring in Elizabeth May's step as the leader of the Green Party. Sometimes I think she feels her agenda's passed her by. I'm wondering if those polling numbers, though, do in some way indicate why the Obama administration seems to be content to sort of coast along. The climate change bill seems held up, obviously, because of the change in the control of the House. But do you think that that's going to reduce? This is a reason why his impetus level has been slowed down a little bit? Paul?
Well, the polling that's been done in the U.S. has actually been tracked over 3 years now, so we're just kind of late to the party on this issue. But that polling has suggested that there was a bit of a downturn. But now there's, again, an uptick in the preparation, the strength that Americans place in this issue. So I think that we can anticipate at some level this issue coming back to the fore in the U.S. and certainly is an issue at the state level. There are increasingly states who are tackling this question, and they see it as important. And I think that we can see some similarity in Canada in that regard.
Alex, just tomorrow when this conference ends, do you anticipate, is there one sort of concrete initiative you think could come out of it?
Well, I mean, what the takeaway for me from this is that, this in a sense strengthens the Minister of the Environment's hand. I mean, he is new to the job, is looking to establish himself, his authority over these issues. This provides, I think, a pretty clear demonstration of the kind of support there is for him as a representative federal leader on these issues to take the initiative and to move forward with a set of plans that frankly are already on the books. I mean, there is a national cap and trade system policy designed already there that has been set aside for a number of years. If the leadership is there, if the interest is there, dusting that off and putting it back on the agenda would be a very live option for him.
I guess the one question, sort of ironic, we have Nick Nanos just before this, which shows the conservative support is surging. At the same time, he's largely criticized for not doing anything on climate change. I guess until the numbers sag, he'll have literally no reason to push harder on that button, would he?
Well, I think that this is not really seen as a wedge issue. I think that one of the results of the poll show that Canadians across all parts of the country and in all spectrum show in a majority case that this is an issue of consequence. So it's not a wedge issue. However, it is an issue that does beg for some leadership and some attention, again, at all levels of government, particularly at the federal level.
Okay, well, there could be an election coming. That's the time to wave the green flag, I guess. Alex Wood and Paul Ledwell, thank you very much for coming in today.